This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined the Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
One question I think we're going to be asking ourselves a lot is what determines the price for a trade up for a quarterback? What determines a fair price for a trade up for a quarterback? Does it matter how much or how close you think this prospect is on a theoretical scale to an Andrew Luck or a John Elway, right? Some of the best prospects of all time. Does it matter how close they are in proximity to them? Is this a simple matter, of supply and demand? There are X amount of teams who want a quarterback. There are X amount of quarterbacks available. And depending on what number outnumbers the other number determines just what the price should be for quarterback. If there are a ton of suitors, then you're willing to accept a higher price for a quarterback. If there are not a ton of suitors, then you're not willing to accept a higher price. What is the fair way to gauge this? Is it the past, judging it based on past situations where the market might have been different? Or is it by judging what that quarterback could do in the future that ultimately justifies that price? See, this is the crossroads that the Cleveland Browns will find themselves in this offseason. We'll talk about that more in just a second, but first, let me thank my sponsor, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required, and also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code WORSTTAKE. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. This year is unique. We are getting the unique experience of being able to watch the projected top two quarterbacks in this draft class, not just play postseason football, but being able to play in a postseason tournament. I mean, potentially here, you might get 16 games this season from a Fernando Mendoza, possibly 17 games out of a Dante Moore. And we're seeing them play longer and more extended time against more and more impressive opponents. And I think that's something that is a unique and special opportunity ahead of the Browns. Now, if we're talking about what we saw this weekend from those quarterback prospects, let's briefly jump into that conversation. Dante Moore, I thought, was impressive in the first half of his game versus Texas Tech. I thought he slowed down a bit in the second half of that game. It is worth noting, I think Texas Tech has one of the most expensive defenses in the country, one of the more talented defenses in the country. And it's also worth noting that Dante Moore, when going up against, I don't want to say good competition, because I think he's done well against teams like Washington and USC, who provide a significant defensive challenge. But, you know, when he played Indiana, it wasn't his best game. And when he played this week against Texas Tech, it wasn't his best game. Now, obviously, it didn't end up mattering. The Oregon Ducks didn't really need Dante to play a crazy game to win, which should be interesting for their prospects, because again, they didn't need an amazing game from their quarterback to beat Texas Tech. That bodes well for their future in the tournament. But you didn't get a crazy game from Dante Moore. I think people are going to extrapolate a lot from one or two games here from Dante because they really haven't taken the time to watch the whole sample of him. But, you know, if you came into this game pretty sold on Dante Moore, I don't think you saw anything to take you off of Dante Moore. If you came to this game not knowing much about Dante or not being sold on Dante, then this game wasn't going to sell you on Dante Moore. Next week is an interesting opportunity. He gets to play against Indiana for the second time. Indiana presents significant problems on the defensive side of the ball. One of the best defensive coordinators in all of football, coaches out there in Indiana. So it's going to be interesting to see Dante Moore handle that challenge, because if there is something that you want to see more from Dante Moore as a prospect, is how he handles uncomfortable situations, because we've seen a lot of that from Mendoza. He's been in pretty uncomfortable situations pretty frequently all year at Indiana. The offensive line at Indiana just isn't the best. So you've seen him deal with a ton of pressure. You've seen him deal with teams having to speed him up. There's just less questions about Mendoza, and we'll talk about him in just a second, especially since you also have the Cal tape that's pretty good for Mendoza as well. For Moore, it's like you haven't really seen how he responds too much to things getting sped up for him. Don't think that these are questions that take him out of the top 5 conversation. I think, if he's there, the Browns will gladly take him with their pick. But these are questions that will impact the enthusiasm that you will have for the Browns if we're talking about trading up for one of these guys, right? Like, the problems that Dante Moore has as a prospect don't really bother you when you're selecting him straight up, but do give you more pause when you have to trade up for Dante Moore, right? I think the one guy in this class that you can make the argument will be pretty easy to sell on a trade up is Fernando Mendoza. First of all, he came in as somebody who people were highlighting as a potential QB1 riser in this draft class. So it's not like he came out of nowhere or his past work is bad. What he did at Cal previously was very encouraging to the people who took the time out to actually watch what he was doing at Cal. And he's taken that step at Indiana, and he's done things you want to see quarterbacks that you trade up for or draft super early do. Like, he's done all the things that you want to see. When you're trading up for a quarterback or you're drafting a quarterback super early, you want to see that they have the prototypical size at the quarterback position, right? That's the number one thing you look for. It's like, hey, how big is this guy? That's the first thing people do, right? 6'5", 230 pounds. He passes that test pretty clearly. He is a NFL-sized quarterback. It's pretty obvious by looking at him that he's a NFL-sized guy. And then you want to watch him play the game. You want to see how he manages the game, see how he responds to tough scenarios in games, see how he responds to new challenges, how he adapts in games, how he responds to getting pressured, right? We've seen Mendoza handle a lot of these challenges really well, right? I think the Iowa game that he has, I think Dante Moore's Iowa game, people don't kind of include that in his games versus elite competition, but I would argue Iowa is a pretty good test for the NFL for a young college quarterback as far as the Big Ten goes, because Kirk Ferentz does a lot of NFL stuff on that defensive side of the ball, especially with the defensive side of the ball. Like, they're a very, very difficult defense to game plan for. What he did against Iowa, I think, has been very impressive. Same thing with Dante Moore. And then, like, you see the big moment where he almost blows the season versus Penn State, and he has to kind of make some big-time plays to get him back in that game. He does it. He throws the big interception against Oregon, comes back, and makes the big throws to put him back in the game. When you're talking about a quarterback that's going to go number 1 overall, you want to see them be a factor in the college football championship conversation. Mendoza has certainly been a factor in the college football championship conversation. When you're talking about a quarterback who's going to go number 1 overall or super close to number 1 overall, you want to see them be first team all Associated Press. You want to see them be a Heisman contender, let alone win the Heisman Trophy. You want to see them show that they can take a team from one place to another. And if you watch Indiana last year and you watch Indiana this year, there's no doubt that Indiana has improved significantly, and there's no doubt that it has a lot to do with Fernando Mendoza at the quarterback position. He's done everything you want a quarterback who goes in a top 5 of the draft to do. So for anybody who's looking for a trade up, the obvious candidate for that and the easiest guy to sell on a trade up would be Fernando Mendoza, right? If he were available, if that number 1 overall pick becomes available, that is something where I don't think you have to work hard to sell that prospect as that. He has all the stuff. 6'5", right? He's not Andrew Luck because he doesn't have the tools of an Andrew Luck or John Elway where you're just like, oh my God, it's unbelievable. But if he had the Andrew Luck tools, that's literally the only thing stopping him is that he can't throw the ball 80 yards like with his pinky, like Andrew Luck used to be able to do, like crazy shit like that. He's not capable of that from an arm talent perspective, but that's the only thing like separating him from that level of prospect. Doesn't guarantee he's going to be a good NFL quarterback. There's been really strong prospects to enter the league that have failed as NFL quarterback for numerous reasons, but I do think he is a guy that you feel really good about if you're able to draft him in the top 5, and you feel really good about the ideal of committing the next 5 years to, which is all you can really ask for. Right at the end of the day. So if you're talking about a trade up, I think Mendoza, that's the one you have to work the least to sell. Dante Moore, you got to work a little bit to sell that idea. He's not prototypical size. He's not small, but he's not prototypical size. He's 6'2". He's a really young guy who doesn't have a ton of experience to lean back on. So there's that mystery element that comes with a Dante Moore. I wouldn't be surprised if we find out that the price to get up to 1 and the price to get up to 2 ends up being completely different just because there's a lot more comfort with the idea of Mendoza going early than there is with Dante. Not saying that Dante's not going to go early. I think he clearly will, but I think there's a lot more comfort given what you have seen of Mendoza, just the scope of it, right? Like this guy goes to the Rose Bowl, plays Alabama, gives Alabama at Indiana of all colleges the biggest ass whooping we've ever seen in Alabama bowl game history. Like, beat them like they stole something. Pretty impressive stuff, right? And it's not just Mendoza doing it. Obviously, Indiana has a very good team overall, but Mendoza is a huge part of why they are just a completely different beast than they were last year with Curtis Rourke as their quarterback. We're going to have to trade up conversation a lot when it comes to the Browns. I think we are so far away from knowing what the price is going to be for a trade up. I don't think we know who truly is going to be in that market or not. I don't think we really even know if Cleveland's going to be in that market or not, right? Like the Browns might be gung-ho to go all in and use resources this year. They might not. I tend to think they will, but they might not be interested, right? We got to figure out where the Jets' minds are with quarterback. Are they looking for a veteran? There are going to be a couple of veterans available that would start, right? We're talking about like Kyler Murray, right? Being one of those veterans available. Does somebody make a move for a Kyler Murray? They take the bird in hand instead of the theoretical possibility of getting a quarterback. I think that's a possibility that could shake up the quarterback market. We're going to figure out a lot about what that trade up market's going to look like in the next couple of months here. But really, that's the question I want to ask you. What do you think is the fair price to get a quarterback? Where do you say or draw the line at what you're willing to trade for a quarterback, right? Keep in mind, like if you ask this question about a prospect for a quarterback, it's a lot different. But imagine that the quarterback is successful, right? Like if I told you you could get Joe Burrow, what would you trade for Joe Burrow? If I told you you could get Josh Allen, what would you trade for Josh Allen? Hell, if I told you right now that you could trade for Justin Herbert, what would you trade for Justin Herbert? And how does that differ to what that price difference is going to be when you know somebody's been an all-pro quarterback versus when you think that they could be an all-pro quarterback. It's a lot of interesting things. I'm interested to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.